Well, during the Stone Age, if you had a cozy cave that you could call your own, you had a few pelts to wrap around your naked, hairy, stinky body, you had basic flint and obsidian tools to catch little critters, and you had a good group of friends that you could eat rocks with, you were set. But not just set, you were also
Low-key.
wealthy. Just picture
Low-key, that's like
it now.
nowadays. I'm
Not a
not gonna
phone
lie
in
to you. I'm gonna be real with you. That is honestly still wealth nowadays, but some people just don't appreciate that. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna keep it 100%. Even though we're in 2025, a lot of people do not have access to like their own cave, um, pelts on their back, random food supplies, right? Like that stuff is surprisingly, with all the technology and progress we have, unattainable for a lot of people. What's going on? We got another video today. We're talking about what it was like to be rich in every time period by Trust Me Bro. Let's see how they were flossing back in the Stone Age, yeah? Some people still don't know what it means to be rich, I feel like, even today, even when
what it
they're
was
quote
like to be
unquote
rich
but hey,
throughout every era of history. The Stone Age. In the Stone
let's
Age,
see.
wealth was measured in terms of resources and survival capabilities almost solely. To be considered rich, one would need an
Gotta have
abundance
a
of
lot of
essential
stones.
resources, such as food, tools, and materials for shelter and
Ooh,
clothing, which
baby.
at the time primarily consisted
Yeah.
of wood, animal pelts, organic materials such as large leaves, and essentially sticks and dirt. Possessing skills in hunting, gathering, and toolmaking would
But you know,
also
we
be
got like months worth
extremely
of cereal.
valuable.
We
On top of
stone
that,
rich, baby.
forming strong social bonds and alliances within one's tribe or community would enhance the access to resources and collective security. What this means is the more friends you had, the more people that you had to potentially help and protect you if things got wild, which back in the Stone Age, they did a lot. Accumulating and managing resources like animal hides for clothes, flint for tools, and a steady food supply through effective hunting and foraging were a key to thriving in this era, and was truly the key
I feel like
of
that's key
becoming
now.
and staying rich.
A lot of people don't know where their
which,
next
if it
meal's
isn't
coming
already
from.
obvious, just means to be alive.
I'm not gonna act
Your
like I wasn't there
survival
too.
was your wealth, as that was all there was to look
That's why I
forward
be
to. If you
stockpiling
could
food,
survive
bro.
another
I'll be
day
buying
and you
like
had the
months worth of
resources
food at a
to
time
make
that I
it through
can.
that day successfully, you were well off. It goes without saying that there wasn't necessarily coinage in the Stone Age, at least not in the early Stone Age. And as far as the absolute origin of money, that is still something that is not fully known or understood. But during the Stone Age, possessing skills and having access to practical, life-enabling resources was the pinnacle of wealth. During the Stone Age, if you had a cozy cave that you could call your own, you had a few pelts to wrap around your naked, hairy, stinky body, you had basic flint and obsidian tools to catch little critters, and you had a good group of friends that you could eat rocks with, you were set. But not just set, you were also
Low-key.
wealthy. Just picture
Low-key, that's like
it now.
nowadays. I'm
Not a
not gonna
phone in
lie to you. I'm gonna be real with you. That is honestly still wealth nowadays, but some people just don't appreciate that. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna keep it 100%. Even though we're in 2025, a lot of people do not have access to like their own cave, um, pelts on their back, random food supplies, right? Like that stuff is surprisingly, with all the technology and progress we have, unattainable for a lot of people. Now, there's a laundry list of reasons why that is, and then we're not going to go into that this video, but just think about that for a second. And having friends too, because a lot of people nowadays, like, we say there's a loneliness epidemic, right? A lot of people just don't have friends like that. People that can reach out to, people that they trust, people that they care about, people they enjoy spending time with. You know what I mean? Perspective.
sight. Just you, all of your best boys wearing small loincloths, hitting each other over the head with big wooden clubs, just being in the moment. Sounds pretty good to me. The Bronze Age. No, not LeBron's age. The Bronze Age. Not to be confused with LeBron
come on, how old is
James.
LeBron?
I'm talking about the Bronze
Isn't
Age.
he like in his 30s?
The Bronze
He's like
Age
38,
took
I
place
think.
between 1330 BC and
Am I
1200 BC and signified a large leap in civilization for a few reasons. Most notably, the production of bronze. This era, while short compared to the Stone Age, which literally lasted millions of years, had significant technological advancements, which propelled society massively. If you're unfamiliar, all
They always
bronze
say the first
is
million is
melted
the
down
hardest.
tin with a larger amount of melted down copper. This alloy was easy to produce and readily available, and the production of this alloy and subsequently the tools made from it allowed for rapid development in both agriculture and warfare. With that being said, what did it look like to be rich, and how was wealth measured during the Bronze Age? During this time, wealth began to be associated
having
with the
bronze.
control and production of bronze. Being rich meant
Yep.
that you had
Figured.
access to these metal ores and the knowledge of crafting weapons, tools, and other ornaments. Trade became more prominent, so establishing strong trade networks and engaging in commerce was also a massive way to improve your wealth. These were some of the earliest economies ever. Additionally, owning agricultural land and livestock, which were crucial for food and trade, would signify wealth. Similar to the Stone Age, both of these are directly tied with life. Now, for almost the first time, social status was also playing a role with your wealth, with leaders often amassing wealth through tribe control over resources. So what exactly did it look like to be rich? Well, during the Bronze Age, we saw some of the earliest civilizations. So with that, we would see villages and larger communities living in one place. With that being said, if you were wealthy, you
Minecraft?
obviously had a nicer place or a larger place or potentially in a prime piece of the community, closer to the water or the farm. Besides that, we also saw irrigation agriculture, which basically means bringing the water to your crops.
Close to
So
the
if
water.
you were wealthy at this time, your farm that you had
That's still
control
kinda
or
true.
access to had an irrigation
Maybe that's
system
why people
built
want,
into
like,
it
lake
for
houses and
convenience.
beach houses and
similar
stuff
to
like
the
that.
Bronze Age, if you had a good, strong network of people that you could trade with and access to tools and knowledge on how to build tools, you were pretty well off. Just imagine you and all your friends wearing slightly more animal pelts in a bigger group of people with a nice farm and a slightly bigger mud hut made with actual wood and nicer materials. You guys are all sitting around the forge making bronze swords and whatnot. Seems like a cool time. In ancient Sumeria, during the Bronze Age, one of the earliest known currencies was actually grain. Grain was used as a popular method of trade. Besides grain, there has been some mysterious clay tokens that have been suspected to be used as a means of trade. And then, as the Bronze Age continues, silver
Clay.
becomes a very popular means of currency, and then later after that, gold as well. So
Gold,
without
yep.
getting too far into the weeds, during the Bronze
The
Era, if you had
golden
a lot of
age.
social status, access to both land, agriculture, and
Gilded
animals,
age.
if you had a prime plot of real estate and you had a steady supply of bronze and you knew how to make good tools, you were really well off. And then
That's
on
still
top of
the
that,
same
if you had
today.
a large supply of silver and gold, then you were rich. The Iron
still the
Age.
same today.
The Iron Age is a
Except
bit of an
replace
interesting
gold and
era.
silver with like crypto and Bitcoin and money.
Because at this point, you might think that it was simply caused of a pure evolution and innovation, and up until this point, everything's just been linear progress. But that's actually not the case. And during the Bronze Age, at least near the very end of the Bronze Age, there was multiple significant factors happening that caused a huge decline in production, literacy, trade routes, wealth, and overall progress for humans as a whole. And the very end of the Bronze Era and the beginning of the Iron Age was actually considered more or less of a dark time in humanity. The Bronze Age was more or less of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of deal. And with the beginning
Yeah.
of the Iron Age, we see almost
It was
more or
just the
less of
same
a
stuff,
redo of the
different,
Bronze Age,
material.
but obviously with a new metal. We have
Yeah.
iron, a much more valuable and a much stronger material.
stuff,
Following
different
the
material.
same trend, however, the Iron Age was shorter than the Bronze Age simply because technological advancements took place quicker and humans were
they
able
were
to
much
evolve
faster,
more
man.
rapidly, even after the setbacks. With that being said, being wealthy in the Iron Age wasn't much different than being wealthy in the Bronze Age, as
Have
a
a lot of
lot of the
iron.
same customs and traditions existed and the same means of production and wealth
Be a king,
accumulation were in
have a
play.
lot of,
The Iron
be
Age,
close to
wealth
the
was
king,
closely
have a lot
tied
of
to the
iron.
possession and production of iron, similar to bronze in the Bronze Age. Mastery of ironworking techniques to create durable tools and weapons provided a significant advantage to anyone looking to become truly wealthy. Rich individuals or communities would control iron deposits and forges, facilitating trade with military strength, either from their own community or even other communities. Agricultural advancements continued to be important, so owning and controlling fertile land and livestock remained to be a very prominent sign of wealth. Power and influence were also consolidated through warfare and alliances, with wealthy individuals holding positions of authority and accumulating wealth through tribute and trade. The Iron Age still yet didn't have coinage, and a lot of wealth was held in gold nuggets, gold sheets, gold ornaments, gold jewelry, fertile land, livestock, access to iron production, and access to military power and influence. The medieval era, aka the Dark Ages or the Middle Ages.
The
This
Dark
era took
Ages.
place immediately after the fall of the Roman Empire, beginning in 476 AD, and lasted for roughly
And that was all the way
1,000
back then?
years until 1400 AD. During this time,
That's
wealth
crazy.
had become a lot more multifaceted and also more centralized on your connection with the powers that be. Besides the king and other
God?
royalty, the richest members of society in medieval
Or the
times
king.
were the nobility and merchants. The richest of merchants were those who engaged in long-distance
I guess
trade,
they thought both
specifically
back
of
then.
luxury goods such as spices, silk, and precious metals, all of which were
Silk
extreme
Road,
signs
baby.
of wealth. And although the levels of wealth between nobles varied quite significantly, the richest of nobles were those that controlled the most amount of land and had the closest connections to the monarch. Regardless of
BlackRock?
noble or merchant, at the top of each of these levels, life
Would
was
BlackRock
pretty
probably
similar.
considered
These
modern day
individuals would have
nobles.
their own dedicated castles, fully staffed with servants. They would have large estates and farms that would be maintained by peasants and serfs. They would have luxury goods such as expensive dyes, luxurious silk clothing, expensive gold jewelry, and access to an almost unlimited supply of food and entertainment of many varieties, if you catch my drift. On top of this, the richest in society also had access to great education, something that was still a large rarity for a majority of the population. This includes reading, writing, literature, and access to other scholarly texts. Now, with this being said, if you were rich in this
Reading.
time period, you had an amazing opportunity to live a life of leisure and luxury. But although that wasn't the case for many people, and the wealth gap during the Middle Ages was severe.
For a
Now,
nice
with that
30
being said, it
years.
wasn't all fine and dandy for the rich of this time, because no matter what your financial status was during this time, you were still susceptible to disease, famine,
Yep.
and war. Just picture
A
it.
nice
You're
30
hanging out with
years.
all your boys. You're in your castle with torches everywhere. Your
Boom.
servant just brought you a big leg of
Arrow
lamb,
through
and
the
you
head.
all are drinking out of gem-encrusted solid gold goblets. You all cheers and spill wine on your expensive silk shirts, but you don't even care because you're so rich. You have a guy in a silly hat come do a dance for you, and then you go to bed and do it all again the next day. Seems pretty cool to me. But let's move on. The early
Till he
modern
starts
era.
coughing.
Bros, we are getting
Oh.
extremely
Till
close
Buddy
to
starts
the
coughing,
modern
then
era.
it's a wrap
We're
for
not
the whole
quite there
community.
yet. We are currently in the early modern era, which takes place roughly from 1500 AD
said.
to 1800 AD.
15
and this era
bodies.
of time is likely one of the most influential eras when it comes to the structure of the world that we live in today. Let me explain. In the early modern era, wealth
when a
was
lot of the
driven by
machinery and stuff
exploration,
came up.
trade, and colonization.
Yeah, and
Nations and
exploration.
individuals who invested in voyages reaped
Colonization,
enormous
mm.
profits from new trade routes and new resources. Merchants and bankers accumulated wealth through the large global trade of goods like
excuse
spices,
me.
textiles, and precious
Yeah, the
metals.
spice
rise
road,
of capitalism
baby.
and establishment of joint
Spice
stock
trade.
companies allowed for the pooling of resources and the sharing of risks and rewards. Owning land and engaging in agriculture still continued to be important, but the growing influence of commerce, finance, and
Yeah,
manufacturing
commerce took
marked
over
a
during this, the
significant
Great
shift
Pirate
in how
era.
wealth was perceived and earned in the early
Wealth,
modern day.
fame,
Up until this
power.
point, all it really took
Gold
to be rich
Roger,
was
King of
having
the
a cow,
pirates.
having a little bit of
Tame
dirt to
this
your
and
name, and maybe
everything
a few
else the
shekels.
world had to
Well,
offer.
not even shekels, literally just bits of silver and having the right friends. But as we got into the early modern era,
Donald
a lot
Trump.
of things seemed
See
to
my
change.
friends.
We saw early globalization, early capitalism, early colonization, and the basis for the society that we all live in today. This was a pretty influential and
Capitalism.
pretty important 300-year run, in my opinion. And with that being
Not all of
said,
us,
what
though.
did it look like to be rich
Some
in
of
the
us live
early
in
modern era?
communism
Well,
and other,
honestly, a lot more of the
forms.
same. Bigger houses, more loot, more money, more connections, more food, more entertainment, bigger boats, more security. The biggest difference was the means of accumulating these resources. And if you were the type of person
Stealing.
going on these
Purely
conquests or
stealing.
voyages, then your life was extremely hectic, spending months or
Yeah,
even
pirates.
years at sea to potentially come home empty-handed or never even come home at all. People were just
Yep.
playing Assassin's Creed Black Flag in real life. With that being said, everything
Yeah.
was just sunshine
That's
and
'cause it wasn't
rainbows,
based
right?
off- it was based off of
definitely
Black
not,
Flag.
like at all. But we're talking about being rich.
Or based
so,
off of
yeah,
real life.
being rich was pretty awesome almost all the time. And in the early modern
That was a
era,
crazy
we saw
comment what
for
he
almost
just
the
said.
first
That was a crazy comment because I don't know how old. I don't know how old you are. Well, trust me, bro. But most Assassin's Creed games are actually very derivative from actual real life events. So the fact that he said this is like playing Assassin's Creed Black Flag in real life is very telling because it's based mostly on real life events already. So it's basically like saying this is like playing real life in real life. But with the connection of Black Flag, I don't know how old you are, like experienced you are, but that just goes to say with like the modern era and things like that, with how we've like tied in media as like a medium through past events when we could just be looking directly at the past events. It's very interesting.
time how being wealthy started to shift. The modern era. And just like
modern
that,
era.
in the last 11 and a half minutes, we
Maybe
went
he just
from
said that to
millions
relate
of
to kids
years
who
ago
don't know,
in the
though.
Stone Age to the modern
that.
day. Now, the modern era is kind of blended into the early modern era, so there's no exact start date, but for the sake of this video, we'll consider it from 1800 until present day. In the modern era, wealth has been increasingly associated with industrialization, innovation, and finance. The Industrial Revolution transformed economies, creating vast fortunes for those who owned factories, mines, and railways. In the
Yeah.
contemporary world, wealth is often derived from investments in technology, real estate, and
property and
financial markets.
technology, yeah.
Entrepreneurs and business owners who innovate and scale their business can achieve substantial wealth. Education and
Yeah,
knowledge has become a
BlackRock.
critical asset, and advanced degrees and specialized skills open doors to lucrative careers. Globalization and digital technologies such as the internet
why I
have
like
further
do stock
expanded
trading and
opportunities
stuff, like,
for
in the
wealth
morning.
creation
Did I trade
across
today? I
diverse
did.
sectors and
much
regions.
did we
I
make
would say
today?
that the world we live in today
was like
is pretty
8%,
great, and we
8 to
enjoy a lot
9%,
of modern
which is, like,
luxuries, and
standard.
we have so many amazing opportunities right at our fingertips. Never before has the world been so decentralized, meaning that anybody has the opportunity to do great things. Whereas in the past, if you were a serf or a peasant working on a noble's farm, you had almost zero chance of being anything more than that. With that being said, in the modern day,
Social mobility
especially
was,
as in
like,
present day,
garbage
the amount of
back then,
opportunities of
unless you,
getting
like,
wealthy thanks
were
to the
willing to,
internet
like,
is
risk it
almost
all.
limitless. But even at the beginning of the modern era, near the Industrial Revolution,
Even
opportunities were
nowadays,
starting to present
gotta
themselves
be willing to
everywhere.
risk a
And
lot
obviously, we got off to a
sometimes.
rough start with extreme amounts of child labor, including chimney sweeps, factory workers, and a lot of horrible stuff that definitely isn't great, but got a lot of people rich. With that being said, what does it look like to be
Like the
rich in the
pirate-
modern day? Well,
What does it look
fortunately, I don't think I have to paint too much of a crazy picture for you guys.
does it look
And honestly, I think in the modern day, wealth is really what you make of it. Because of the
Subjective,
vast
yeah.
amount of opportunities, it can be whatever you want it to be. If you have enough
Hey,
money
I like
to
that
sustain
answer.
yourself, then your wealth could look like living in a van that you own and have enough money coming in on a monthly basis to maintain your lifestyle. Or it could look like the biggest mansion full of the craziest watches and cars and gold doubloons. Now, for a generalization, the rich of today
Mm-hmm. That was a
typically
very
enjoy
insightful
compounding
take.
interest with their investments, a good portfolio of real estate, freedom of time by having tasks delegated through their employees, and freedom of location and time, meaning that they can work where they want, when they want. That is, if
Low-key.
they want to. Now,
what I'd
one
be
thing I will say,
structuring my
bros,
stuff
is
like.
that I just tried to sum up millions of years of history in under 15 minutes. So
That was
if
impressive.
something doesn't sound
I'm not gonna
fully
lie to
right,
you.
just
That
remember,
was
trust me, bro.
impressive.
Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video.
That was
I had a lot of
impressive,
fun
trust me, bro.
making
I
it, and felt
appreciate
like it's
that,
been
and
too
that
long since I
nuanced
made a
take.
history-based video.
But you
So
missed
let
a
me know what
point,
you
I
guys
think.
thought, and if you guys have any ideas
Family,
for other interesting
as
videos
Dominic
like this,
Toretto would
please
say.
leave them down in the comments. Thank you guys
Family.
so much for watching. And
People
like always,
underestimate a lot
trust
about a
me,
good
bro.
community, you know? Good community, good circle of people that you like. That in and of itself is wealth, right? Could be like a whole community of people that are all working for like a minimum wage, but if you pool the resources and spend it correctly, you can get it right. That being said, I'm gonna go ahead and call it right there. Let me know what y'all think about this video. Do you think which okay, I have a cool question, right? Which era do you think you would have been the richest in, being how you are now, right? And what would you have had? What would your life have looked like? And also another question, side question, if you want to answer this one instead, what does wealth look like to you in the modern day? Like, what does being rich mean to you? Because like Bugattis and like bust down VVS chains are not for everybody. So what does wealth look like for you? Let me know down in the comments. Go ahead and like the video. Go ahead and follow Trust Me Bro and follow me for more reactions. And I'm gonna catch you in the next one. Bye.